Good morning, boys and girls from Kids to College. As you can see, I am outside enjoying this beautiful weather. And so I hope that you get a chance to get out here before it rains. But I figured since today we're going to be making our own Technicolor storm clouds, that it was appropriate weather to be outside. So I'm going to tilt my camera so that you can see what I'm doing. You're only going to need a few simple supplies, okay? So I'm using some Tupperware, but you can use any sort of small bowl that you want. This is what we're going to put our food coloring in. And so I have 4 of them lined up because I have 4 different colors of food coloring, but it's up to you how many you would like to use. If you only have 1, that's fine. I also have my shaving cream. If you have the small little bottle, that's fine as well. I also have a 1/4 teaspoon, but if you have a syringe or a dropper, you can use that as well. Okay, and then you're going to need a tall glass, okay, and water, of course, first of all. So we're going to start out by getting our colors ready. So we're going to add just a little bit of water to each container. We want the color to be really concentrated, so we don't want to add too much water to it, okay? So we're going to just fill those up. Okay, so now we've got our water. And next, what we're going to do is we are going to add our food coloring. So we want to make it heavily saturated. So we're going to add probably about 10 drops in total. So there's my blue. Now we're going to add the green. And once again, we want it to be really saturated. So I'm doing about 10 drops of that. And it'll have time to kind of spread out. Now I'm going to do my red. You can see that over here. Got that super concentrated. I'll move these down so you can kind of see. All right, and lastly will be yellow. And sometimes yellow is very hard because it's a lighter color. So we may just want to add a few extra drops of that yellow in there. So now we have all of our colors, okay? So we're going to let those sit and saturate, and I'm going to just put them over to the side here while all of that color disperses. So the next step that we're going to do is we are going to fill up our large container about 2/3 of the way with water. So I have that here in my mason jar, okay? So we're going to fill it up. And that should be about good. So about halfway is what I would suggest, okay? Now we're going to top it off with a very generous amount of shaving cream. So we're going to shake our shaving cream up before. And let's see. There we go. And this is why we always want to shake it. All right. And we want to get that in there as best as we can. Okay, let's see if I can kind of dip that in there a little bit. There we go. Let's see. And push that down a little. So I'm just going to top it off a little more. Okay, there we go with that. So that's all set. So now the next step is we're going to use the 1/4 teaspoon, and we are slowly going to start adding our color, okay? And the closer that we get to the edges with it, the faster it's going to go through the shaving cream and come down as rain. So the way that we're looking at this is that the water that's in this cup is like the air, and the shaving cream is like the clouds. So as the clouds get saturated with water, they produce rain, okay? So as we see, mine is kind of overflowing a little bit here with shaving cream. I'm going to take some off the top and just kind of discard that. Okay, so first I'm going to start with my green. And let's see, so I'm going to fill that up and I'm going to drop it in, okay? And now I'm going to go over to my red and I'm going to fill that up and I'm going to drop that in. Okay, now I'm going to take my yellow, which actually appears to be a little more orangey, and I'm going to drop that in as well. And then lastly, I'm going to take the blue and I'm going to drop that in, okay? And so I think this is why they were saying the closer we get to the edges, the quicker it will go down in. So I'm just going to kind of push mine in, that way that color can get down in there better. Okay, so as we see, it's kind of starting to saturate our clouds, or better known as our shaving cream. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to rinse off my measuring utensil. Okay, and I'm going to add a little more color, okay? So I'm going to drop that in, put a few drops of our green. Okay, I'm going to put a few drops of our red. Okay, and since we have such a good amount of shaving cream, this may require quite a bit of the food coloring, but we will see what happens. I see that it's starting slowly. If I turn it this way, it's slowly starting to create our rain clouds because it's passing through the shaving cream and going into the water. So I wonder what happens when I just do a little bit of that, and let's see what happens. There we go. So now we're starting to get the reaction that we want. So the food coloring is heavier than the shaving cream. And so therefore it passes through it, just like water would pass through a cloud. The cloud gets saturated, and then therefore we end up having storm clouds. So we're going to sit for just a moment and see what happens with this and see how much it drops. Right now it looks like it's kind of sitting on top there. So we're going to add just a little bit more and watch that break through, and there we go. It looks like we've got some more magic happening, right? But it looks like our cloud is kind of holding the color. So let's see what happens when we do that. There we go. And I can tell you that the top of this, if I could tilt it, looks really pretty right now. So our food coloring starts to go down into the jar. It's starting to disperse little by little. It's holding on to the top of the shaving cream, much like a cloud holds on to the water that it dispenses to us when it rains. So pour a little more in there. And you can play around with this until you get the reaction and the effect that you would like. So why don't we try doing this one more time since we have some colors left, okay? So I'm just going to go dump this out and rinse it out, and I will be right back. Okay, and we're back. So this time I added a little more water. That way it's a little closer to the brim, because the type of glass or jar that you use, I think, really kind of affects this experiment, okay? So we've got it nice and filled up. We're going to top it off with a generous amount of shaving cream, as instructed. Kind of push that down a little bit. Okay, and so now we're going to start again. And we're going to get close to those edges, as they said to. We're going to get our color in there and see what happens. And that's the great thing, is sometimes with science, things take a moment to work because we're waiting on a reaction to occur, right? So sometimes those reactions take a moment. So let's get our color down in there. Okay. And I'm just going to kind of make a little bit of an area around the edge where I can really get that color in there, okay? So now I'm going to do my red. Now I'm just going to pour a little right by the edge as they said to. Okay, there we go. So now we're starting to get a better reaction from that. So I think that if you add more water, so that way your shaving cream is closer to the top, we have a better chance of this experiment working the way that we really, really want it to, right? So as you can see, all of those colors are starting to kind of fall downwards. So, and remember that the water is the equivalent of the air. And so when a storm comes and that cloud gets saturated, it has to release it somehow, right? It can't hold on to the water. So it ends up dispersing it, and that's how we end up getting rain and getting storm clouds. So as you let this sit, the color is going to slowly but surely disperse a little more. Okay, so I'm just going to kind of get in there with my measuring tool, and that way we make sure. Okay, and as you can see, if you can see it on the camera, my shaving cream has all that color attached to it still. So all of that color will eventually go through, okay? And another thing that you could do is try just using direct drops of food coloring. And we can play around with that and see if we get any sort of reaction from that. That's the great thing about experiments, is that you really can try different things, try different ways. Okay, there we go. So what I would recommend to you is if you have a dropper or if you have a syringe of some sort, use that, because squirting the food coloring from its container directly in gave us more of that storm cloud, and it kind of looks like a tornado right now almost. They gave us more of that storm cloud effect that we were looking for. So let's just dump in a little bit more color here, and we want to go into the edge and get all of that in there. There we go. So that's the wonderful thing about science. So play around with this. It is messy, so if you can do it outside, I would highly recommend doing that. And stay tuned, because next we're going to be looking at our peripheral view, and we're also going to be testing our reaction time. I hope you have a wonderful day from Kids to College.